The empty cup. John had always prided himself on knowing it all. As a senior manager at a bustling tech firm, he had climbed the corporate ladder through hard work, long hours, and the belief that expertise was his greatest asset. Yet, recently, something was missing. Meetings felt like a blur. His conversations, once dynamic and energizing, now seemed mechanical. Ideas, which he had once found exhilarating, no longer sparked the same fire in him. He had become stagnant. The promotion he had worked so hard for had arrived, but it wasn't the victory he had imagined. It was more of a weight than a reward, and with each passing day, he found himself growing more disillusioned with his work. One evening, after another uninspiring day at the office, John saw an advertisement for a Zen retreat in the local paper. He chuckled at the idea. Zen? Wasn't that just a lot of sitting around, trying to find peace? But the idea lingered in his mind, and eventually, the stress of his job pushed him to try something different. He signed up, not knowing exactly what he was seeking, but hoping that perhaps the retreat would give him some clarity. Upon arriving, John was welcomed by a calm, smiling monk who led him to a small, simple room. After a brief introduction, the monk handed him a cup of hot tea and sat down across from him. John, ever the skeptic, asked, "So, what do I do here? Is there some kind of workshop or lecture I'm supposed to attend?" The monk smiled gently, pouring tea into John's cup. He didn't answer right away, instead continuing to pour as the tea began to spill over the edges, running down the sides and pooling onto the table. "Wait!" John exclaimed. "It's overflowing. You're making a mess." The monk stopped pouring, but did not say a word. Instead, he calmly looked at John. "You are like this cup," the monk said softly. "You are so full of your own thoughts, ideas, and preconceptions that there is no room left for anything new." John stared at him, unsure of how to respond. The monk continued, "If you want to learn something new, you must first empty your cup." John blinked. Empty his cup? He didn't understand. He'd spent years building his knowledge, filling his mind with strategies, techniques, and accomplishments. How could he just empty it? "Come," the monk said, standing and gesturing for John to follow. "Let us walk." They strolled together through the monastery's peaceful gardens, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. The monk spoke little, simply pointing out the delicate balance of nature, the way the branches of a tree arched, the way the stream flowed without hesitation, the way the lotus flower bloomed in its own time. As they walked, the monk asked, "What is your greatest challenge right now?" John paused. For the first time in a long time, he considered the question. "I feel stuck. Like everything I've worked for is no longer enough. I don't know what comes next. I feel like I've hit a ceiling." The monk nodded. "Your mind is full of expectations. You believe you must always be moving forward, always achieving, always solving problems. But in doing so, you lose sight of the simple truths around you. You must empty your cup to make space for a new way of seeing." John wasn't sure he fully understood, but something about the monk's words resonated. There was a lightness in the way he spoke, a quiet confidence that John couldn't help but admire. That evening, after the day's teachings, John sat in the stillness of his room. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, imagining his mind as a cup. For the first time, he allowed himself to release the pressure of needing to be in control, the constant thoughts of his next promotion, the next strategy, the next big idea. He let them all go. The stillness felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable. But as he sat quietly, he began to notice the subtle sounds around him, the rustling of leaves, the soft hum of the wind, the rhythm of his own breath. In this silence, he felt a shift. His mind, once crowded and restless, began to quiet, and he felt a new sense of clarity. He didn't need to have all the answers, to be constantly striving. Sometimes, simply being was enough. The next morning, after a light breakfast, the monk invited John to sit with him in the garden once more. "I've emptied my cup," John said slowly, "but I still don't understand what comes next. How do I fill it?" The monk smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "You will not fill it by forcing anything. The cup will fill in its own time, with the right experiences, the right insights. But first, you must trust that the cup is already whole. John didn't have all the answers, but he felt a profound sense of peace that morning. For the first time in months, he didn't feel the need to have everything figured out. He didn't need to be the expert. He just needed to be open, to allow the present moment to fill him with whatever it had to offer. And as he returned to his life, John found that the more he allowed his cup to remain empty, free from the clutter of overthinking, overplanning, and overdoing, the more it seemed to fill with the things that truly mattered: clarity, creativity, and peace. His cup wasn't empty anymore. It was simply ready for whatever came next.